So today on Confidence Journeys, I'm with what I think is one of my favorite people on Substack, and I know you're really popular with a lot of people. So I'm with Dr. Bronce Rice. I'm sure you all know him anyway, but just for anybody that doesn't know Dr. Bryce, just
There you
changed
go.
the name,
You
Dr.
could
Rice.
no, no. If you truncate the first and last name, that's what you get. Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself? And hi, Stella.
So I'm Bronce Rice, psychoanalyst, psychologist, health and wellness coach. Mainly, I kind of do therapy, kind of face to face, one on one. So a little bit about me. Haven't been on Substack that long. I think it's been 6-7 months, something like
Right.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I was going to ask you actually.
Okay. Okay. It's
And
got-
I think
that's
so. Did you join then about October time?
Yeah, I think that's about right. That
That's the
sounds
same
about
with
right.
me. Same with
Okay,
me.
okay. So nice. All right. It's about the same time.
I mean, to be
Nice,
fair,
nice.
I joined the February before that, but I joined and then thought, I don't like this. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And so I left. But then I came back and
Yeah.
now I've
Yeah.
got,
No, it's interesting because I have three platforms that I partake in. It's like LinkedIn, Medium, and then Substack. And I kind of got comfortable and used to them in that order. So
yeah.
that when I came to Substack, I didn't like it that much. I didn't understand it.
Mm,
And so it took me a while to kind of get used to it. But now it's where I'm kind of at least the most comfortable, so to speak, or at least feel like I've kind of found my audience or family or however you want to
yeah.
put it. Feel most comfortable here in a lot of ways in terms of just kind of being more who I am, I guess, and put myself out there.
I
So
think I
yeah,
think it's easy to do that here, isn't it? And I don't know why that is, but we do seem like more of a community and more like family
uh-huh.
orientated here. It's very easy to make connections. I haven't had anybody be nasty to me yet.
Right. No, 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 no. That's good. No, let's keep it that way.
It's always a best time though.
That's
Never
right. That's
mind.
right. That's right.
So, yeah, so your confidence then. So this is about your confidence journey. How, at this point in time, how confident would you say you are? And thinking of self-confidence rather than like confidence in your job description.
Yeah. I guess self confidence. If I'm going to make a distinction between kind of what I do for a living and then just kind of self confidence in general, I, you know, I, I would think somewhere like seven, maybe is kind of what I would think. Um, if you ask me about work, it'd probably be a little higher. Uh,
Yeah.
Um, so it's a little lower than where I'm at work in some ways. I'm probably more anxious in various ways, just say in relation to what we're doing.
Mm,
Um, because I spent probably 20-25 years. You couldn't find me online. That's kind of the way I wanted it.
yeah.
So it's been kind of an interesting journey, kind of putting myself out there, and people kind of get glimpses of me in ways you probably don't in various ways, unless you really kind of knew me and hung out with me on a regular basis. So it's been kind of strange. So I'm not the most comfortable, um, but I've come to understand that's okay. That there's
Yeah.
something about that, in the confidence journey that I'm like, well, that's okay. You
Yeah.
know, I'll make
Yeah.
some progress somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
totally agree. I mean, when I was, because I had very low self confidence when I was, well, even up to a few years ago, and I built my confidence up because I made a decision that that's what I wanted to do. And but when I was at work, I was always, well, not always, but I think I built my confidence up at work a lot
yeah.
quicker than
Hmm.
I had my personal self confidence. But then I think when you go to work, you've got your job
Yeah,
hat on, if you like. You've got the title and you know what you're doing. And also, especially in like your kind of role as a professional, and I was
yeah,
um, towards the end of my career, I was a financial advisor. So people, they look up
yeah,
to you
yeah.
with kind of that respect. So it's a lot easier to be confident. But then when you're in social situations,
Right.
that's a whole different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, no question. Something about what you said resonates there. I think, on my end, I spent decades just kind of like learning, steeping myself in kind of how to do, what I do. And I think I've spent more time in my life figuring out how to do what I do for a living than anything else, as far as putting my mind towards something. And so I don't think I ever like put my mind towards like, hey, I'd like to kind of like figure out what goes into confidence, and what are the factors, what are the parameters, and then spend time building that. Like
Yeah.
I didn't think about doing that. I mean, it makes sense,
Yeah.
but it's not something I thought, hey, I'd like to go do that and see how it goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because I mean, I made a decision to build myself up because I've been through a bad marriage and I totally lost all confidence in myself and self-belief.
Mm.
And I knew that because I'd had a pattern
Yeah.
of it's interesting because somebody said to me, a friend said to me when I was going through a bad marriage, she said, get start journaling, start writing down everything that happened because it'll be useful if you have to go to court or anything like that. So I started doing that, but then
Mhm.
I never needed to because I never needed to
Mm.
go to court. But what I was writing became very healing. And so I carried it
Yeah.
on afterwards. And then because I recognized that I got a pattern, I thought, right, okay, so I either break this pattern and change, or I go back into another bad relationship and just spiral downwards. And I want to spiral upwards. So I just
Yeah.
started learning about everything, like self
Mhm.
help books.
Yeah.
And I built my confidence up from there, mainly from self help books.
Yeah. That makes sense to me, that you know s- sounds like, one of your friends mentioned, hey, try some writing,
Mm,
and see how it goes. And so you proceeded to do some of that. I mean, it sounds like you didn't need it for court, but something in there about kind of exploring what you were going through and kind of writing it down. And there is, there is something, I think, for a lot of people, there's something healing, kind of in that. You're exploring kind of your own vulnerabilities in certain ways, or at least what makes you feel uncomfortable. Or, I get it can lead to hopes and dreams as well. But like if I'm in something that I don't like, you could write down, think about, well, on the left side of the page, what's not going well, and then on the right side of the page, I could write, well, how would that be different? What would it look like? What would it sound like? How would I even consider going about it? And in the writing, there's something that you're doing already that often helps.
yeah.
Right? It's an interesting kind of aspect to think. Well, hey, I'm gonna, and whether I put it out there or not, there's something that I'm kind of inside that's personal. I mean, it's meaningful, and I'm going to think about it and write about it. Sometimes you can organize it in ways. It's nice.
Mm. Yeah, it
Yeah.
helped me an awful lot. I mean, now I do more meditation than journaling, although I've decided to go back to journaling because I'm trying to do more. So, the thing with building my confidence is I got to the stage where I feel very self confident now and I feel I'm quite courageous, I think.
Okay.
There's always going to be some things that worry me, but I've got to the stage now where I think, well, how far can I take this? What else can I do? So that's why I'm going to go back to journaling because I want to do a lot more like self inquiry and self
Yeah.
reflection and see where that takes me.
No, that would be kind of an interesting endeavor to kind of, like, say, put yourself to kind of journaling for a couple of days, and then I don't know, you could move over to meditation for a couple of days, and then just notice, well, hey, what are the similarities?
Mm,
What are the differences? And then I think there's something about, for me, I know I would begin to think, well, what happens if I combine the two, right?
yeah.
I've done this a little bit where I'm sitting on the cushion, and when I first started, it was kind of hard just to sit with my own mind in silence. And so I'd put on some meditation music, and then I would start having thoughts. And so then I would put a journaling pad next to me. If I had a thought, I would, kind of write it
Okay.
down.
Yeah.
So like for me, there's this process of always trying to figure out, well, what do I do? How do I do this?
Yeah.
Right. Like with the
Like a very
confidence.
logical way of looking at it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
with the confidence, right? I'd be like, oh, okay. So, you could read articles, right? The self help stuff, right?
Yeah.
10 steps to self confidence, right?
Yeah.
And I would just kind of go at it. But so you raise a thing in terms of, well, you could come back to something that you did at some other point that's helpful to you,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
not, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because the thing with self-help books is obviously they're written for the masses. They're not
right.
written for me specifically.
Yeah, yes, yes,
But if
yes.
I can find one little thing in there that I think, yeah, that resonates, I could do that. And so
Right.
I always try to have an action. So any book I read, I think, well, what's the action I'm going to take from that, and how am I going to
Yeah.
use it?
Yeah. No, it's nice. Yeah. So you're kind of orienting your mind towards, hey, let me find some things that is supposed to help a lot of people.
Yeah,
And then what do I come away from this self-help book with that I could kind of continue to put into use somehow, an
well,
action,
yeah.
make it your own in some kind of way,
You've
right?
got to really, haven't you? Because well, it's like you say in your
Mm.
book, you
Yeah.
everybody is different. There is no one size fits all for anyone.
Right.
So, I mean, do you think that we then have to take 100% responsibility for our own self care?
Mhm. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Um, I think my initial response would be yes and no.
Mm,
I think eventually there are parts that I think will, you've heard me kind of talk about the sleep, exercise, diet. That I think I don't care who you are. Those are the three pillars I think of health and wellness. That if you don't carry them out on a regular basis, your self esteem, let's say, and when
mm,
we're talking about confidence, in some ways it might take a little bit of a hit after a
yeah,
while.
yeah,
And I think you know I can't pay somebody to go do those things for me, and so that's where I think, yeah, I think there's a fair amount that I can't give to somebody else as if it's their responsibility.
yeah,
Uh, I would think there's probably ways of arguing, with that, or are counter arguments about that. But I think I often come at it from myself in terms of, yeah, it's kind of a endeavor unto myself in some fashion. Like I can go to the gym, with somebody else, or I can meet up with somebody for a walk, and or a hike. And so there's ways that I can kind of you know get a community in some ways to make it more easy,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But at the end of the day, you are choosing the exercise you want to do. Because
Yeah.
if you went to, say, for example, you went to a gym, just a general gym, and you spoke to the personal trainer there, and he said, well, these are the exercises you should do. He's probably giving everybody the same exercises because that's what he's been trained to do. But if you actually pay a personal trainer to come and train you personally,
Right.
then you get a set of exercises that fits you. But
Yeah.
even then, you might think, well, okay, I like that one, but I
Yeah.
don't like that one. That one doesn't seem to be working for me. And
Mhm.
you've got to work out what's right for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like with meditation, for me, I went to a local Zen center, on and off for about 3 years,
Yeah.
uh, and learned to kind of dabble with the meditation in terms of, at first my mind was like, well, am I doing this right? Am I sitting okay? Well, how about the breathing and that kind of stuff? At least to get more comfortable with, okay, well, now I kind of, understand enough to carry it out to where I find some benefit. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, huh.
Yeah. So with the health and wellness, then, how does confidence fit into that, would you say?
Um, I think that's been, probably stood out a little bit, probably with Substack in a certain way. But for me, there's a little bit of a kind of a how much can I trust myself?
Yeah.
Right? That I'm going to need to put myself out there a little bit. And what if I don't say the right thing, or what if I stumble? Um, is that going to be okay? So for me, part of it, I think, has to do with kind of building up some aspects of self trust, even in terms of, well, if I don't know the answers, that's okay. I might be able to say, hey, I hadn't thought about that. Let me think about that, and you know, maybe down the road I'll do a live on something that I wasn't familiar with,
Mm.
to try to kind of become more comfortable with something.
Mm.
But there is something about kind of for me, with the health and wellness in regard to confidence. There's something about kind of figuring out how to trust myself and being okay with not fully knowing all the answers.
Yeah.
That's okay. Something about that for the health and wellness, I think that stands out to me. Like what we're doing here. Um, I've mentioned this, in other live situations, but I don't think it's something that, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago you wouldn't have caught me thinking, "Oh yeah, I would like to do this."
Mm. Yeah.
Right?
I was the
But
same. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
People don't think that now,
yeah,
but I was really scared to do stuff like this.
yeah,
But it's just a matter of pushing yourself. But what I was going to say is, do you find then, because you're obviously very qualified, and you've got 25 years of experience of
yeah.
being a psychoanalyst and a
Mhm.
psychologist, so you obviously know your own job
Yeah,
inside out, and you're very confident
yeah.
there. Did you find it difficult to accept maybe that people wouldn't read your notes or wouldn't read your posts, or because that's something I found really difficult, because having been good in my career, good at what I
Yeah.
did, I found it really difficult to start something new and accept that I wouldn't be very good at it. I kind of came in thinking, yeah, I'm brilliant, but I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've got the experience of, I could do what I do in my sleep at this point. And,
Yeah,
there are
yeah,
people who come in they're all different, different problems and whatnot. And so every once in a while, you might have an outlier situation, y- you know. Um, but for the most part, I've done so much training. It's like I know how to think about things. And I think I'm more open to different ways of thinking as well than I used to. Um, but yeah, there was something different. I think too, part of my psychoanalytic training, they've got a thing called the blank screen,
mm,
and so the idea is that the analyst doesn't really say a whole lot. You don't give the other person a whole lot, and the idea is that the person brings to the table and to the session everything about them, and that it really has nothing to do with me. And
mm,
I think that's a false idea, but it was something in the way that I was trained, so that over time, I became very comfortable with being quiet.
yeah,
Right. Eventually, I put it together that I didn't think that was all that helpful to most people. And so people would come in, they'd never been to therapy before. And so if I was just quiet, they didn't know what to do. And so
yeah,
understandably, I think it would make people upset and irritated with me and whatnot. And so I learned, okay, well, with this person, I need to talk with them a little more, educate them. But with Substack, there was something about the idea that I'm going to write a note, and it's going to be, something about feeling. It's not just going to be thinking, right? And
yeah,
so for me, it's like I start off and I specialize, like, in what I call the mind in conflict. That, like, I can listen to people and I can just hear, where their ambivalence in life. We all have it, where it comes up, and how to listen to it and follow it, and how to think about it. So that with the notes, people are like, well, put something out there in regard to how you feel. And I'm like, I don't wanna do that. Gotta feel, like, I don't wanna, but, obviously, it's important to pay attention to how we feel at points. But the uncomfortable piece was, now I had to figure out, as you kinda get up, you gotta figure out how to do something different that you're not comfortable with. That
yeah,
that comes, in relation to part of it. And the uncomfort wasn't just that, hey, I'm going to be uncomfortable with what I do for a living, right?
Mm.
I put, I mean, that's where I put time and energy to figure out how to do that less, be uncomfortable with what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Now it's like, well, you're going to share you're going to share on something uncomfortable about yourself. That's something inward, and put it out there about yourself. And I'm like, that goes against some of my training. So it was just kind of a weird experience of like, I don't want to do this. Is
Yeah.
it, and so I hear some of kind of younger individuals kind of talk about how they're comfortable doing some of this. And I think, maybe that's just because you grew up with it. I
Mm.
didn't grow up with this. But anyway, so that's a little bit of probably a little bit of tangents, but those are
Yeah.
my
No,
thoughts.
that makes sense. Yeah. Because young people, I think young people have got younger parents who were probably, because their parents would have been, because my parents were war years. So, they
Um,
grew up in the war years. So they didn't have a lot of emotion to share because everything had been so hard. And I
mm,
guess
mm, mm, mm.
my generation then made better parents because we didn't want to
Yeah.
be as cold as our own parents. So the young people have been brought up with more caring and being able to show
Yeah.
their feelings, maybe.
Well, I'm thinking about more just the kind of growing up with technology and being online.
Yeah, yeah,
That it's just like second nature,
yeah.
to a lot of individuals, where it's not something that I wanted to kind of really be a part of in
Mm,
various ways. So I was just thinking about younger individuals where maybe they grow up from day
yeah,
one and kind of learning to be online is just part of kind of what they do in some
yeah,
regards. I
yeah.
guess I
It's
was thinking,
part of life. Yeah,
about that piece,
yeah, yeah.
that
I
I'm
guess.
asking myself to do something, and I'm just like, ah. So it's just kind of a weird experience, because in some ways, I'm getting more comfortable, but in other ways, it's still kind of like, oh, so you're going to go do something that you're uncomfortable and talk about it with other people that, in some ways, you know them, but you don't know them. So anyway, this is kind of an
Yeah.
interesting experience.
So where do you think you are now compared to where you were 8 months ago when you
Mm,
came
mm,
on
mm, mm.
Substack thinking, I don't want to do this, but I've got to do it?
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I think I'm kind of more comfortable. I think I know a little bit more of the lay of the land in terms of like how to write a note, how to write a newsletter.
Mm.
What's the difference between a newsletter and a post?
Hmm.
Um, like I know how to now set up a live a little bit, and who push the buttons in some ways to where it works. But I'm still, yes, I'm still nervous. Like beforehand, we touched base, and then I was kind of talking about. So I'm still worried about, am I going to be able to push the right button? And I don't see where to do this,
Yeah.
and um, so at the same time, I think I've been through it enough to be like, it's okay. You'll learn it, and if you don't do it in a way that you'd hope, it's okay. There'll be
That's
another
it.
time
Yeah.
to to
Yeah.
to do it again. So I think I'm much more comfortable, and part of that, and as I've talked about, I think for me just comes with the idea that part of becoming more comfortable, say with the confidence, is like, well, you're going to put yourself out there more, which means you're going to be more uncomfortable as well, right? I mean, have you experienced a little of that, where you're kind of like becoming more comfortable, and yet you're
Yeah.
doing kind of new things that maybe you didn't grow up with?
Yeah. When when I first started writing on Medium, like I said, I expected
Hmm.
everybody to think I was marvelous, and then of course nobody does, nobody reads it.
I like you, marvelous. I like.
And then I thought, okay, I must be rubbish then. I might as well give this up. And it was at that point when I met Sinem Gunell. Met her online, obviously,
Yeah.
of Write Build Scale, and
Mm, mm,
so
mm, mm, mm.
joined her group, which helped me with my writing.
Ah,
Which then that's why I came back to Substack, because they came to Substack, Sinem, Philip,
oh,
and Gary.
gotcha. Okay,
So I
okay.
came with them. And I've
Yeah,
learned
yeah, yeah.
so much from them. So that's given me a lot of confidence. But still, when I was doing my course,
Yeah.
um, I thought there were times when I thought I can't do this. It's just too hard. I don't understand it.
Hmm.
But you just muddle through. And I think this is where AI is great because you can just ask a question, how do I do this? And
Uh,
it'll just tell you. Whereas before you used
mhm.
to have to like find out by going through loads of different questions and looking at reading loads of different things. But yeah, so I went through my course and then I thought, okay, I'm going to put it out there and everybody's going to buy it. And of course they don't. You get the odd trickle and you think, oh, okay, where is everybody? And you just have to learn to relax and it is what it is. I mean, the thing is, it is absolutely true that when you start out learning something new, you're not going to be good at it because you're learning. You wouldn't be learning if you already knew it, and you just have to accept that. So you do it,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm a firm believer in step by step. Just what's the next step that I need to take? And I think when we do that, we do keep spiraling upwards. We keep when I say spiraling upwards, I mean we grow and we
Yeah.
move to higher levels. Um, it's like my grandson plays a lot of video games. I've never
Yeah.
played a video game, but I think it's a
Right.
really good way of looking at it that you move to different levels. So I've
Mm.
got through that level. I know how to do that. Now I'll move to the next level and learn how to do that.
Mhm. 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 I I I got a question,
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
I've watched you and a little bit of your Substack journey where I think, one of the things that have stood out is that I don't know, something about kind of love and kindness, compassion, like you've put that kind of front and center,
Yeah.
right? And I haven't seen you necessarily move too far from that. Have you thought about how kind of compassion, love, acceptance, how that plays into kind of your journey with confidence?
Yeah, to me it seemed to be like a natural progression because I built my confidence up and now I believe in myself. I mean I believe in myself to the extent that I know I can get there, not that I know it all in the first place. Um, but when I started to really reflect on my confidence and my journey and thinking, well, when I look back now, how did I get from there to here?
Yeah.
And I think, self love had to come into it because there was a point in time when I didn't love myself.
Mm.
I actually thought that my life wasn't worth living, basically. And so I had to learn to love myself, and so that I could let other people love me because I was pushing everybody away, family, friends, everybody. And then I think it just kind of almost came to me. I can't say there was a point in my life when I said, okay, I think love, gratitude, and kindness are the
Yeah.
three most important things. There's no
Yeah.
point that I actually thought that.
Yeah.
They kind of just happened.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think it's from meditating and
Mm.
kind of getting more spiritual. And I kind
Yeah.
of think that things get downloaded in me.
Yeah.
So when I wake up, I've gotten a new thing. Now I'm going to be love, and now
Yeah.
kindness, and now
Yeah. Yeah.
gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just all seems to fit together to me.
Which is nice. It's not necessarily something I would. I mean, it makes sense when you lay it out, but on some other level, like a lot of times, I hear about confidence kind of in relation to the business world,
Yeah.
and then how you might go about that. Um, and some of it you're like, geez, that doesn't sound all that kind. That doesn't sound all that compassionate. I mean, if you're putting the bottom line in terms of money and the dollar kind of
Mm,
at the front and center of things.
yeah. And this is why it's hard for somebody like me. It's hard to be. It's very easy for me to say, well, I'll coach you for nothing. And I've had to stop myself doing
Yeah.
that. For one thing, clients don't get the same value if they're not paying for it, I've
Mm.
found.
Mm,
They don't want to put the work in so much
mm,
as they do if they're having to fork out their own money for it.
mm,
So yeah, I know what you mean about money. But money, if you have money, you can do more for other people. You can
mm,
give more, so
mhm.
I can learn more. I can take
Yeah.
more courses, buy more books, and be of more help to people. So that's how I try and look at it. And also, I mean, if I'm perfectly honest, at this point in time, I don't need any more money, which
Mm.
again is a block. It can
No.
hold you back because you think, well, I don't need to worry about that. Well, yeah, I should be. I should be putting stuff out there that I can earn money from,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
that's, why we're here, really. But
Well,
also, if I look at one of my main goals, which is to live a long and healthy life,
yeah,
and I've got 120 in my mind, which
yeah,
means I've
nice.
got 54 years left to live, and I've got to fund those 54 years.
Yeah, yeah,
So I do need to make money.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I think I was thinking, kinda like the stereotype business culture where it's kinda like cutthroat,
I've been
do
there,
whatever you
done
can
that.
for the goals, the product or, something of that sort, and it's just like, like my sense, and I'm like, "Geez, that doesn't the stereotype, right? It's not all that loving all that loving and all, kind, compassionate at points. I mean, it's a little bit of a stereotype. So that just kind of what I was thinking is like, oh, it's kind of interesting to think about, my own kind of stereotypes
Yeah.
and think about, well, when I do think about confidence, how do I go about that in relation to myself? Um,
Because
because
I think it's
yeah,
because you've got a
yeah,
very logical mind, haven't you? And
yeah,
I think that's why you find it more difficult. Whereas I don't think I don't think I'm very logical. I just go with
yeah,
my instincts.
sure,
Uh,
sure, sure.
and
Yeah,
when I did work in the corporate world, and I
yeah,
worked for a bank where they said, just sell. You got to sell
yeah,
this. It doesn't
oh,
matter if the
yeah,
person needs it or not. Just sell it. You've got a target to
yeah,
reach.
yeah, yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, no, I can't do that. I just
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
do
yeah.
that. So I had to leave and go and work somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, and then I think that makes sense to me, in some kind of way that, I don't wanna sell something that somebody doesn't need or that I don't think is good for them.
No.
Um,
Because it comes back on you in the end, because then banks had this big mis-selling thing, didn't they, where they had to pay out loads and loads of money in the UK anyway. I don't know about the
mm,
US.
mm, 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 mm.
Um, but I was successful in
Yeah,
sales because people trusted me, because
right,
they
right, right,
knew that I wouldn't give them something they didn't need.
right. Yeah, yeah,
But yeah. Yeah, so going back to the health, um wellness and health equation. What sorry, it's gone out my head. What's it called? The wellness
Oh,
equation.
the wellness equation?
Yeah,
The
sorry, yeah.
well-being equation. Yeah, well-being.
Well-being.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
forgot for
well-being.
myself. I'm like,
Sorry. Sorry.
no, no, it's good. It's
I
nice
do
that
love
I forget about it once in a while, all right?
it. So how are you getting on with looking for your publisher?
Oh, I'm still at the phase of finding an agent, um, and so I have, one guy who I like, who I think I met with him. I think it went pretty well. He looked at my proposal, which was a good sign, and then for the first time, an agent asked for my manuscript. Right, I never had that before, and so um, he's had it for about 30 days. It's maybe tomorrow. So I'm thinking, tomorrow I'm like, I'm gonna go write him back and kind of poke around and say, how's it going? Because it's it's at a phase that I'm not sure. Well, how does it move forward from here?
Mm, yeah.
Right. So that's an interesting thing. It's like I'm not confident in knowing what the process is.
Mm.
Right. And I'm sure, probably like the way I think about the well-being equation, I think, well, it's all a little different. So I imagine it's all the routes and whatnot are a little different. But it's kind of where I tell myself with the confidence, like, hey, that's okay.
Mm.
Just poke around. If you don't know everything, that's okay. Part of being
Yeah.
human.
Yeah.
Just see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, that's why you're going to the agent, right? To help you get it out there, get it published.
yeah, like that's kind of my thinking in terms of, hey, this person has some contacts along the way that and knows about something and spent decades learning about something.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, I gotta know more than I do. So, well, let me just go out and ask them a couple of questions and see how that goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, because they always say the publishers always say you need like a great email list and blah blah blah.
yeah.
So
Right,
you've
right,
been
right.
building that up.
Trying to, and I think that's the interesting thing. Is pretty much what brought me to
Mm,
Substack. It's where I have my email list, and so at some point, I hired somebody to kind of help me a little bit with kind of how to think about marketing
right.
and publicity in certain ways, and they kind of said, hey, if you want this to see the light of day, other than you can self-publish it, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, go out and it's almost like kind of a weird, like, well, go out and sell yourself. Like, oh, jeez. All right.
That's not easy, is it?
No, no. I'm like, yikes. Okay. I guess people are doing it. So, I mean, I think that's kind of another thing that I've kind of told myself with a lot of this stuff. It's like, wow, people figure it out. People are doing it. There must be, ways to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember years and years ago when I was just starting to build my confidence. I think, yeah, it was before my marriage, my toxic marriage. So I probably wasn't in too bad a place at that point. But this girl, I remember her name was Sally Henderson, and I think I'd only just started work. So I must have been about 17, 18. And she said, look at yourself as the product. So sell
Oh,
yourself
yeah. Yeah.
though
Yeah.
you would sell a product that you were really, really proud.
Yes. But yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
like, show people your features and your benefits and why
Right.
they should buy you. And I
Yeah.
thought it was really
Yeah.
good advice.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, that's
Always
nice.
show your good parts. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. So in some ways, it's like, well, with sales, it's like, well, they have to like in some ways what you're selling them, of course, but in a sense, if you help them feel like they trust you,
Yeah.
right, right, right,
Yeah.
right, right,
That definitely works. People definitely buy people and not
right, right,
more than the product.
right, an experience in some ways,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I sold my car on the weekend,
Ah,
and well, my husband sold my car because I don't know enough about cars to sell one. But yeah, so the a couple came down to look at it, and my husband really liked this guy. They took to each other. They were chatting away, and I knew that the guy would buy the car, and I knew that my husband would sell it to him because he'd said to me, "If I don't like him, I'm not gonna sell him the car. I don't care how much you offer me," because
that's
he loves that car.
that's oh, that's nice, right? That's
But we
nice.
don't need 2 cars. But no, I think the yeah, my point there was that he wouldn't have sold the car unless, he liked the guy that was buying it, and I think the guy that was buying it wouldn't have bought it if he hadn't have liked
Right,
the person
right,
he was
right. Yeah,
buying it
yeah,
from.
yeah,
They were very much alike.
yeah. It's nice. Mm.
So when you've got your book published and it's out there, and it's a
Hold on.
bestseller and it's doing really well, will you
Yeah.
stay on Substack or will you go back into your non-platform world?
That's something I kind of you know I talked earlier about kind of one of the things I specialize is kind of the mind of conflict, and so I get a sense of my own that there is this kind of wish in some kind of ways to kind of go back to something that feels a little easier, a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm almost like to have a little bit more free time just to kind of come and go. But like after I see people face to face, right?
Yeah.
I just want to go for a hike I want to go
Yeah.
see some animals, and I don't want to think about putting myself out
Yeah.
there. I don't, but that there is something about the writing, right? And kind of putting it out there, connecting with it, playing around with the words. There's almost something kind of like strangely healing
Mm.
in it, which I didn't think about that to begin with. Thinking about confidence, self esteem, right? It's probably a place where I get a chance to come and kind of like play around with, well, how much of your worries and your concerns are you going to share?
Mm.
Right? Are you going to be honest about those things? Um, so I'm torn. I mean, I think I'll stick around. Um, I think what I think part of what I want, we'll see if I get it, right? That
Yeah.
I think even if I get the book agent, um, I think I tell myself there'd be some kind of an experience of, oh, well, I don't have to work so hard, right? Because it's
Yeah.
almost like the Substack for me has become this experience tied to my book. And in some ways, the book does kind of hit upon areas of, for me, of kind of confidence in terms of, I don't write about it that way, but it hits upon those areas of, I mean, hey, am I going to be good enough? Am I
Yeah.
going to be smart enough? Am I going to be able to put something out of value that people will read and like? Right. But I've had to kind of do it in a way that I'm not comfortable with.
Mm.
As you mentioned, you kind of put yourself out in a way. It's like, well, I was good at something before. Now I got to figure out how to be uncomfortable, or how to get more comfortable, you
Yeah.
know. So I think I'll probably stick around, is my sense. I'm hoping it's going to be, a little bit less anxiety.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Because it won't matter so much, will it?
Guess not. It's a weird thing because I think there are points where I've wrapped it up, with so much anxiety at points that I've just been like, well, this is not healthy. It's just like, so I've been like, wait, even if you don't get the book out there, it's okay. It's just like, part of it is I'm trying to connect with something that's meaningful.
Mm.
I'm trying to put it out there and think about it in terms of, hey, what else happens to it? I can't always control that.
No.
So there's part of my
Yeah.
thinking about the process of what I'm involved in, trying to do that a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, tell me again a little bit about, like, for you, because like for me, you can ask the question in terms of, well, so I get the book out there, right? I say it does okay. Maybe I can kind of go away. I can tell myself, well,
Hope you
like the
have.
interesting thing, right? Is I've written a third of a second book, right?
Okay.
Uh, you know, and I thought, well, maybe I won't even put that second book out there. I'm just like, if I get the first book, I'll try to go that, and then I can just go back to not being online. But
Mm.
like for you, like, is there a point where you'd think, well, I'll go back to not being online yourself?
I don't. I don't know. I quite like being online.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
husband calls you guys my pretend friends
Well, that's a weird. Yeah, no, that's a weird. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because he doesn't do this sort of stuff. I mean, he's on Facebook and he might message me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just,
um,
it,
but it's kind of, I mean, and for me, I think it started in lockdown because before lockdown, the only time I'd been like talking to people online is when we have Zoom calls at work, which were boring as anything.
mm,
And
mm,
so, it wasn't something that I was particularly comfortable with. But then because of lockdown, and I'd retired the year before, and I decided to be a life coach. And so
yeah,
I did
yeah,
my training online rather than
uh,
going to a
yeah,
place because you
yeah,
couldn't. So I did it online and I got used to talking to people online, and
yeah,
then I joined the community and I
yeah,
started making these what I connections, but really friends because I like talking to people. May I ask? Sorry, may I
Yeah.
ask?
Something of the nature of your upcoming text, Dr. Owen. Um, eh, eh, could you
May
write that again?
may I,
Could you type?
Dr. Bronze? May I ask for the nature of your upcoming text, Dr. Hogan?
Um, what,
Ah, that's
what,
from Dr. Hogan, Richard Hogan.
my upcoming a post or book or
Do you mean the book, Richard or Dr. Hogan? Just maybe clarify that for
yeah,
us.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Book.
Oh, book.
Yeah, the nature of the book. Yeah,
Yeah. So Sue was talking about herself in terms of doing some training to become a coach at the start of the pandemic.
yeah,
Interesting enough, that's when I started to write my book. When I had so many people coming to see me as a therapist, I couldn't take any more people, and I began to feel guilty about that. So
mhm,
my book is kind of about your well-being and the factors that kind of go into helping it come into existence. So for Richard, you could think about, what are the various factors in your life, how you've been raised, where you spend your time in terms of what helps you feel healthier, and connected to yourself in a way that you prefer versus maybe not, and understanding those factors and how to bring your, well-being into existence. That's a little bit about what my book is about in terms of trying to help people figure out what does theirs consist of. And I can tell you what the science says it consists of, but then how people kind of connect up with those various factors is pretty idiosyncratic. So I hope that kind of answers the
mm.
question a little bit in terms of what my book might be about or is
Yeah.
about. Yes, it's not out there. So
It is about,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That was my bad, really. I should have asked
Um,
you. I just assume people know what your
yeah,
book's about.
yeah, no, 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 no worries. I think a lot of people probably don't just because it's not out there.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah.
write about I write about different areas of kind of health and wellness, but I don't know if I've actually kind of written in terms of stringing together how various factors come together.
Yeah. So Richard says, so amplifying the goodness of the well-being.
Yes, yeah, in a kind of hopefully in a way that each person can kind of take something and figure out how to use it for themselves. Again, in some kind of idiosyncratic way. Um, so I can say kind of like sleep, exercise, diet. Everyone kind of needs that to bring their well-being into existence and how to feel good about themselves and their experience in some kind of way. But each person kind of, you know, what type of exercise do they choose? When do they sleep? Um, it's all a little bit different in various ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think most people need the 7 to 8 hours, so 7.5 hours on average, I think. But
Yeah.
the
Y- y-
timing can change. So for me, I like to go to bed early and wake up mega early.
No, I'm
Um,
saying well, I'm the same way.
yeah,
I kind of have what you'd consider monk hours, and I go to bed super early in the evening and wake up very early, middle
yeah,
of the night kind of thing, and start kind of writing
yeah.
in various ways. So like let's say Richard, I don't know if with the amplification of the goodness of the well being, that is true. Um, could you write one thing that you feel like kind of that is kind of special to your heart that you think has to do with maybe your well being?
Hmm, interesting.
See if you see if you hear me, if you'll do that.
Or anybody, if anybody wants to just
Yeah,
type in what they would say was, the core of their well-being.
it doesn't have to be what one thing. It could
Mhm.
be um, like for you. So you've talked about confidence, but in some ways, as I've said, I've seen you kind of amplify just kind of compassion, kindness, love as kind of a central way of kind of being in various
Yeah,
ways.
yeah.
Yeah.
to try always to be kind, to always
Right.
live from your heart and show love and be always be grateful. But I think as far as well-being is concerned, my health is probably physical and mental health is probably the most important. Writing about mental health, uplifting. Thank you, Ashley. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, physical and mental health for me would be probably my
Yeah.
most important parts of my well-being, particularly because my family have got a history of heart disease. So, like most people in my family die of heart attacks.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm, 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 mm.
and so I went to get my bloods checked last week. I'm just waiting for the results, but I don't think there's going to be any problem.
Mm, mm, mhm. Yeah, and my assumption, right, would be that on days that you, say, go out and actively take care of your heart, that you're more likely to kind of be able to get in touch with the feeling of kindness within yourself and be able to share it with others in a
Yeah.
little bit of an easier fashion. Not that you couldn't, not that you couldn't on other days, but I think for certain individuals, if you're not taking care of like that, what I call it the trifecta of health and wellness, of sleep, exercise, diet. If you're not taking care of those three things,
Mm.
you know, I think it becomes harder to kind of feel good about your experience in a thinking, feeling, and being able to connect up with other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of a vicious circle, isn't it? Because if you don't feel confident, if you've got low self-esteem and you don't love yourself and you don't look after yourself,
Yeah.
and you just feel worse. So it kind of loops round, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, and if you took that as kind of a idea that if you came from an environment that wasn't conducive growing up to you know kindness or love, or you came from an abusive environment, and then somehow didn't take care of your mind and body,
Yeah.
that kind of reproduce aspects of what you kind of grew up with, in different ways, but you'd be reproducing something that almost for a lot of people becomes kind of familiar to them, even though they may not like it.
Mm.
But if in terms of how would you, if you wanted more confidence, right? It's like, well, we could say, hey, let's live out areas of sleep, exercise, diet. Once you do that in some kind of ways, tie it to aspects of kindness, see how other people respond to it, see how you feel. And then over time, if you did that, do you feel more confident about yourself and your abilities to connect with aspects of yourself and other people that you prefer?
Yeah. I mean, that would be such a
Right.
good exercise to do.
Yeah. And that would be an example of how I might, help someone think about, say
Mhm.
confidence, their well being, and maybe how to live out something different than maybe what they grew up with.
Yes. Yeah.
And it
I mean,
takes,
yeah. Self-love is the foundation. That's always where you start.
yeah,
Um, because most people that have low self-esteem have got self-love issues as well. So, but the because I think self-esteem, self-love, self-belief, and self-acceptance. If you work on any of those four, your
uh-huh,
self-confidence automatically goes up. So if you
yeah,
work on all of them, then your self-confidence is going to be elevated. So Ashley had said that she had mental health and physical health problems, but had to increase the positive thought process. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Which
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure that helped you, Ashley. I'm sure it did. Um, or okay. So please refer to my publication. Okay. Uh, and could you watch in the next day on a
Who- Can't
courageous?
see, I can't see who it is.
That's Richard Hogan, Dr. Richard
Oh, oh,
Hogan.
oh. So, so,
Okay.
read his piece on diversity.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay,
Okay, we can't do it
okay,
now,
good.
but yeah, we can have a look at
Yeah,
it
yeah,
after, maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
And Ashley says, uplifting others is the most important daily emotional process. Yeah, because if you are kind to other people, it helps you. So it helps them, it helps you, and anybody you're in connection with at that time. So during that day, it spreads to them as well because you are releasing your feel good hormones.
Yeah, it's if you look at the science of well-being,
Yeah.
right, it's the biggest factor that they touch on is kind of warm, loving kind of connections to other people.
Yeah.
And so Ashley, what you just hit upon, I think helps other people and yourself feel like you're participating in something that's kind of warm, caring, loving, that's meaningful, right? You can help other people. You might forget about your own worries as much. You can help uplift somebody if they're having a hard day. You can uplift yourself, and it's conducive to kind of like better relationships, right?
Yeah. It does. It spreads. It spreads. You do one kind thing for some. Start that again. You do one kind thing for somebody, like even open a door for them, say hello to them, smile, and or buy somebody a coffee,
Yeah.
behind you in the queue or whatever. One little act of kindness that makes you feel good. It makes them feel good, but they will also then spread that kindness to somebody else, even if they don't realize they're doing it. They will do something kind for somebody else,
Mm.
and then because it then releases, um is it oxytocin that it's released? It's like the love hormone.
Oh yeah, I
it,
think it's a
it
bonding.
actually
It's
leaks
a
out
bonding
of you.
chemical.
Yeah, it actually leaks out of you and
Uh-huh.
affects the people around you, so everybody feels better.
Uh-huh. hmm hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ashley mentions the creating positive encouragement and empowerment, safe space community. Yeah, that safe space is pretty interesting in terms of,
Yeah.
how do you go about it? And then, you know, how would you kind of like figure out if within a community setting that it feels like a safe space to most everybody there? And if you can create that and then participate in what you said previously,
Mm.
I mean, to me, that's a huge part of healing in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go in with the attitude that it's a safe space. I should tell it's getting late for me. I'm getting tired. I can't talk properly
Okay.
anymore. Um, yeah, if you go in with the attitude that it's a safe space, and you can all almost become the safe space. If you are facilitating a group, you can become the safe space, and you open your heart to the people around you. Um, and it actually lifts the whole group when you do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Looks
You
like
have
Richard
to reach
says,
a certain level of open-heartedness yourself before you're able to do that, because otherwise you are going to be a little bit guarded yourself.
yeah. Uh, Richard said something about it generating neurotransmitter pathways.
Okay.
Um, I'm assuming that has to do with kind of the compassion, love, kindness, and how it
Yeah.
gets.
Yes,
Um,
it yes, it generates improved
yeah,
neurotransmitters pathways. Yes, thank you,
yeah,
Richard.
yeah,
And then Ashley says showing support to each other is important. Yes, it is. And to Ashley, it's important to Ashley. Yes, I agree.
and then to think about, what I mentioned, what we had talked a little bit about a few minutes ago about if you grew up in kind of a difficult, say, home environment, and you were going to kind of try to live out something different than that in relation to kind of like care, kindness, be compassionate, kind of tone down the inner critic
Yeah.
and how other people do it. I think kind of what Richard mentions, like that's likely to open up new neurotransmitters in the brain. I mean, you're creating new neural pathways
Good. Yeah.
in relation to love and kindness that, in theory, if they weren't there but before, it's like, well, you're creating something new, within yourself and in relation to your community or environment.
You are, but I think for me, it's more like you're opening a door that's already there because we
Well,
have got love inside us. We have got kindness and compassion inside us. It's in our soul, if you like.
mhm,
But what we do is we block it with our insecurities and putting our guard up.
uh-huh,
And I think when you open your heart and you just take the bars off and open it up and say, right, okay, I'm here. You might hurt me, but I'm going to put myself out there.
mhm,
That's when people start picking up on that vibration.
yeah,
And so I
yeah.
guess that's where the neural pathways come in because you are laying down a path.
Well,
Um,
yeah, that's the interesting thing. So if the argument, right, is that we all have it in some ways, and it's a doorway, then if you look at that doorway as a pathway that I suppose you could think, maybe set up. Um, but I think that the science kind of shows that you're actually creating something new
yeah.
also. So it is pretty interesting to
It
kind of,
is, yeah, because
uh,
as I understand it, I mean, I'm sure Richard knows a lot more about it than me. I only know what I've read, but so you have these beliefs, and these beliefs form pathways in your brain. So you might, like, for me, I believed I'm not clever, so therefore, I'm not going to be able to do very much because I'm not
mm,
intelligent enough. And so that is a pathway in my brain. That's a belief, and your belief has become your reality. And
right.
so when I decided to build my confidence and then decided that I am actually more clever than I think I am, then I'm gradually by with that replacement belief, by keep reinforcing it, by taking lots of qualifications, passing exams, showing that I can do stuff, I form new neural pathways. So I have new beliefs now. So
Right.
that's now my reality that I am
Mhm.
a kind of intelligent
Uh,
person, not too
Right.
intelligent, but I'm
Right.
kind of,
Right. 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 Right.
but I'm good enough is the
Right.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, we've been talking for an hour.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess we'll wind it up. But does anybody have any burning questions that they wanted to ask but haven't plucked up the confidence to ask yet? Do it now or
Right.
forever.
Right. Yeah, right. That's right.
Okay, I guess not. So is there anything you wish I'd asked you that I didn't?
I don't think so. I think I just kind of appreciate the experience of kind of coming on and getting, the opportunity to talk about, kind of what we're doing, talk about writing and putting ourselves out there, um, being able to kind of connect in a way that's meaningful. So
Yeah,
I just appreciate that.
yeah,
So I don't think you've not asked anything. I think just providing the space, for us to kind of talk about things that are meaningful.
yeah,
And I like that, we were able to open up. Some people kind of made some comments, which is kind of
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah. How about
Brilliant.
you? Anything you wish I would have asked? We can do a part. We can do a part two.
Yeah, we can do a part two. Yes, yes, that's what I wish you'd ask. When can we do this again? Because I've enjoyed it so much.
Same here. Same here. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it again. Definitely.
Okay. Okay.
Because you need to practice your lives.
There you go. Right. Yeah. No
So maybe
question.
next time I'll be your guest. You can
There you
set
go.
the
There you go.
agenda.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
That's the
Nice.
next step for you.
Well, that sounds good. I haven't really done that yet, so that would be.
Okay, there you go. That's what we'll do. Okay. Right. Anybody else have a question? It doesn't look like they do. But thank you so much, everybody, for being here and for your questions. That's been brilliant. So thank you, Richard. Thank you, Ashley, and anybody else that made a comment. And sorry if we didn't notice it because it does go quite fast.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I've
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah. And thank you, Bronze, for being
Thank
here
you, Sue. Have a good one.
because we've talked about this for so long and you've
Yeah,
done
no, we did. We did.
that.
I think I might have said, I might have said no a couple times because I was like, I don't know
You
how to do
did.
this. I'm
You said, I'm
anxious.
not ready.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I will speak to you soon. Take care. Have a good day. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you, everybody. We'll end here. Okay.